If you're in your 50s or 60s, this isn't advice. It's a message from the near future. Not a dramatic future. Just a quiet one, where most of the noise finally stops and you begin to see clearly. The strange thing about getting older is not that life becomes shorter, it becomes more obvious. You start noticing patterns that were invisible while you were busy living inside them. For example, you stop measuring life in years. You measure it in remaining firsts. The last time you'll see a place. The last time you'll pick something heavy without thinking. The last time someone older than you is still alive. You don't know when those moments happen. But eventually you realize many of them already did. And that changes how you see everything behind you. You wake up differently. Not rushed, not late, just aware. You begin recognizing days instead of planning them. Instead of asking what needs to be done, you quietly wonder what is still here. The house sounds different. Not empty, just honest. There are fewer interruptions, and somehow that reveals how loud life used to be inside your own mind. You realize aging isn't losing life. It's losing the illusion that life will wait for your convenience. My name is Margaret. I'm 74 years old, and I live alone in a small coastal apartment where the ocean is louder than the traffic and mornings arrive slowly through pale blue light across my kitchen table. I'm not giving you advice. I'm describing what becomes obvious when life stops rushing. For most of my adult life, I believed I was being responsible. I organized everything. Bills paid early. Appointments scheduled weeks ahead. Plans arranged so nothing important could fall apart. I thought that was what adulthood meant, keeping life under control long enough so that one day I could finally relax inside it. There was always a phase I needed to get through first. When work settles down. When the children grow independent. When finances feel secure. I never noticed those phases didn't end, they replaced each other. Every time one pressure lifted, another stepped into its place wearing a different name. So I adjusted again. And again. My days were full, but they were full of management, not living. I remember entire years by responsibilities, not by moments. The year of overtime. The year of school problems. The year everything was hectic. At the time it felt productive. It even felt necessary. But looking back, I see something strange. Nothing catastrophic stole my time. Routine did. I kept preparing for a calmer season where I would finally sit without thinking ahead. That season never arrived. Because life doesn't pause for completion, it continues while you organize it. And slowly, without noticing, I wasn't experiencing my days. I was administrating them. When I was younger, I thought time was the rare thing. I guarded my hours carefully, planned them, saved them, waited for the right moment to use them well. I told myself there would be a period later in life where days would open up and I would finally do what I postponed. And eventually, that part came. There are afternoons now with nothing scheduled. Mornings that don't demand urgency. Entire days that once felt impossible to own. But they arrived with a condition I never considered. Energy didn't arrive with them. I can sit longer, but I tire sooner. I can travel, but I prepare more than I explore. I have the freedom I imagined, without the strength I assumed. It's a quiet trade life never announces. You spend youth protecting time because you think it runs out first. You spend age protecting energy because that was always the real limit. Many dreams weren't impossible, they were mistimed. We postponed living for the age we expected to enjoy it most. Not realizing enjoyment depended on a body willing to participate. I didn't run out of years. I ran out of effortless days. And that is when I understood. Time was never the resource I should have saved carefully. Vitality was. I used to believe I was a good listener. I sat across from people, nodded at the right moments, answered when spoken to. From the outside, every conversation looked complete. But inside, I was rarely there. While someone told me about their day, I was planning tomorrow. While they explained a worry, I was preparing a solution. While they paused, I was already thinking of my reply. I didn't notice the difference between hearing and receiving. For years I thought love meant helping, fixing, advising, improving things so the people I cared about would be safe. I didn't understand that most of the time they weren't asking for direction. They were asking for attention. Now, in my 70s, I recognize the feeling instantly when someone gives it to me. It feels warm and calm at the same time, the rare comfort of not needing to hurry your thoughts. And that is when the memory arrives, how often I rushed others without realizing it. Relationships rarely end with a single moment. They thin quietly. Stories become shorter. People stop repeating themselves. They adjust to the part of you that never fully arrives. Nothing dramatic breaks, so nothing feels lost, until much later, when silence becomes normal. I once believed presence meant being nearby. Now I understand presence meant pausing long enough to let another person exist without competing with my thoughts. Every stage of my life had a different worry. In my 30s, I feared not having enough money, enough stability, enough certainty to feel safe. In my 50s, the fear changed shape. I had built something by then, so I worried about losing it. And now, in my 70s, the fear is quieter but more honest. I notice time itself. For years I believed fear came from circumstances. Fix the problem and calm would follow. But life kept proving otherwise. Whenever one concern disappeared, another stepped forward. A new bill replaced the old one. A new responsibility replaced the finished one. I waited for the day nothing would be uncertain so I could finally rest. That day never came. Because uncertainty wasn't the interruption, it was the structure. Peace arrived only when I stopped treating unpredictability like an emergency. When I allowed life to remain unfinished without assuming something was wrong. I spent decades trying to secure a permanent feeling in a temporary world. Now I see fear doesn't leave when life becomes controlled. It softens when you stop demanding control. Very little was ever stable. I simply wanted it to be. And strangely, the moment I stopped asking life for guarantees, I began feeling safer inside it. For most of adulthood, I was becoming someone. Not in a dramatic way, just gradually, carefully shaping a version of myself I believed would finally feel complete. I worked to be dependable, respectable, capable, the kind of person who had things figured out. Every achievement felt like a step closer to that finished identity. But the finished version never arrived. Each time I reached a goal, it held its shape only briefly before another expectation appeared. I thought I needed one more improvement, one more correction, one more proof that I was enough to relax inside my own life. In my 70s, something softened. I noticed I was tired of maintaining a character I had spent decades constructing. Not exhausted from living, exhausted from measuring whether I was living correctly. Titles mattered less. Opinions loosened. I didn't feel the same urgency to explain myself or to be understood perfectly. And with that, a strange relief appeared. I didn't have to arrive anywhere anymore. I wasn't a final version waiting to be achieved. I was simply a person continuing to change, the way I always had. All those years I thought identity would give me peace. Instead, peace came when I stopped needing to define myself so tightly. I didn't lose who I was. I stopped defending who I thought I had to be. For a long time, I believed the important parts of life would announce themselves. Big milestones. Celebrations. Turning points you could point to and say, that mattered. So I hurried through ordinary days, assuming they were just the space between meaningful events. Morning routines, familiar meals, quiet evenings, I treated them like background noise while waiting for life to feel significant. But memory doesn't work the way plans do. When I look back now, it isn't the dramatic days that stay clear. It's repetition. The way sunlight landed on the kitchen table at the same hour each morning. The sound of someone moving in another room. The comfort of knowing what tomorrow would roughly look like. At the time, those moments felt replaceable because they happened often. Now I understand they were happening often because they were life itself. Nothing important looked important while it was happening. We only label moments as meaningful after they stop repeating. I didn't miss life because it was rare. I missed it because it was constant. I was waiting for experiences that felt exceptional, not realizing meaning lives inside familiarity. The days I rushed were the days that built everything I now wish I could visit again, not to change them, just to notice them properly. If you are in your 50s or 60s, you are standing in a rare place. You still have the strength to do most things without thinking about them. But you're close enough to later to understand it isn't endless. That combination, energy and awareness, doesn't last forever. I used to believe understanding would naturally change how I lived. It didn't. Understanding only matters when you allow it to interrupt your habits. You don't need to transform your entire life after hearing this. You only need to stop postponing the parts that never required preparation. Stay a little longer in conversations that have no purpose. Finish ordinary evenings before moving on to the next task. Call someone before you have a reason. These things feel small while they're available. They feel enormous once they aren't. Later doesn't arrive as a date. It arrives as a limitation, a moment when options quietly reduce. And by then, you don't crave bigger achievements. You crave ordinary access. More chances to sit without urgency. More chances to listen without planning the next step. You are not too late. But you are at the point where delay starts becoming loss. So don't wait for a perfect season to begin living carefully. This moment isn't preparation. It is already the part you will wish you had stayed inside longer.